Yeah. So the Chile protests, a state of emergency and curfew. There's been protests going on in Chile. I don't know if it's resolved yet, but I was doing some reading on that, and it's pretty interesting. Um, People have died. So basically, what happened is, my understanding. I should actually come up with an article to share with you guys so you know what's going on too. Chile child protest. Whoops. Chile protest 2019. Here we go. Here's a Wikipedia article. So don't cite this on your academic papers, but there you go. So basically, what happened, to my understanding, is whoever organizes the transportation fares, like for buses and trams and that kind of thing, they upped the prices, and this set off a wave of protests. And what got me thinking was interesting is it's like really like an increase in transportation fees, but apparently they have the second highest uh, cost for transportation fares, and so apparently second to what, Sao Paulo? Yep, Sao Paulo. Um, so really, I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing to consider because these protests started because of an increase in public transportation fare. And you might think like, well, that's kind of dumb. Like, why would that matter? Well, it's like, okay, not only are their transportation fares the second most expensive in South America, but poverty and inequality is apparently a big deal in Chile. Cost of living too. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article. Follow along if you like. um, so it's just interesting because like doing the little bit of reading, and Francisco would of course correct me on anything I get wrong, but it seems like Chile has experienced a lot of growth, a lot of success, and that kind of thing. But um, where was the statistic or whatever? It's like basically like the top 1% own like 26% of the wealth in Chile. Sorry, I got a booger attack here. Anyway, so um, it's kind of interesting because I feel like the U.S. we have guardrails on. Like we, after Trump was elected, we had all these riots in Oregon and Washington and really kind of everywhere. But it was particularly bad where the usual suspects are in Antifa. Um, but it's like, okay, so we had and have had a lot of issues with violent protesters, thanks to folks like Antifa and whatnot. But it feels like that's kind of contained. It feels like there's only so far that we can go. I don't know. It feels like in the U.S. we live in a sort of bubble. Like things can get bad, but they're not going to get too bad. And I think that's going to change. I think that's going to change at some point in my lifetime. We can talk about that if you want to, but I don't think that other countries have that kind of bubble, those kind of guardrails. And so with Chile, it's like the stuff that's happening in Chile or has happened with this protest movement. Um, it's kind of scary because, you think of Chile and you think of uh, beautiful tourist destinations. You think of what's the main city, Santiago. You think of like beautiful oceans, that kind of thing. Um, and I don't know, like the general perception of Chile is kind of high, to my understanding. But it's like this happened. People have died. They have a list of the people who died down here. Deaths. 2 women died and 1 man was seriously injured in a fire caused by protesters inside a supermarket in the southern Santiago suburb of San Bernardo. A Polish teacher was accidentally shot and killed by his father-in-law, who was trying to stop looters in a nearby market. Looting is something I've seen on here a lot of as far as injuries and deaths go. Looting. If I remember right, what was it? That black guy who was beaten by the cops and it sparked a whole bunch of outrage. Anyways, I remember seeing memes about Rodney King, and I remember seeing these memes about Koreans on rooftops shooting looters. I'm like, that's fair, man, because I understand from the looters' perspective that like you're part of a disenfranchised group, and I can't blame you for seeing such a wealth disparity and getting pissed off about that and thinking, you know what, I'm going to get that flat screen. Screw the man. I get it. However, people run those businesses, and I would be right there with them. Well, I don't know. I don't think I could kill people, but I support people's right to defend their properties. So if Koreans really did get on rooftops and shoot looters, it's like, that sucks, man, for both of you. But I go to the individual first, so I would have to say the looters are second down to the business owners. And of course, there's a nasty precedent that you could say that starts where it's like, okay, well, the Macy's could shoot you. I don't know. Could Macy's shoot shoplifters? I don't know, but that's a funny, gross thing to think about. Yeah, and I don't know. I've had some pretty bad disagreements with communists before. So much Antifa communist talk. Maybe that's because communists and Antifa are so closely associated with this kind of crappy behavior. But it's like I've had strong disagreements with communists before, and it's strange how they will justify violence for stuff like this. And I'm thinking, like, no matter how disenfranchised you are, it doesn't give you the right to steal from a hardworking person's business. And I've seen the justifications, stealing from Walmart. It's like, who are you really hurting? They have insurance anyways. And it's like, true, but that doesn't make it right. And I don't know, like, where I'm at right now in life, I'm very much like, here's my framework, operate within that framework, and don't deviate. Like the microcosm, I mean, the macrocosm is a reflection of the microcosm. And so, I don't know, this is kind of Jordan Peterson-esque here, but it's like, if your house is in disorder, maybe physically, but it's like if you have a bad relationship with your wife or your wife and kids, it's like maybe you've got some spring cleaning to do in your own heart, but this is kind of far off the topic from Chile. Kind of just fluid, free-form thought going here, because this is really big. I mean, sorry, here's another tangent, but it's like I feel like, man, I didn't really know any. I saw one blip on the radar of this story, but after that, I was like, there's just so much information coming at us at any given time. But it's like, this is significant stuff. But I don't know, people make fun of Americans for being dumb, and it's like, all right, fair. We've got a lot of dummies, but go out into rural Poland or Afghanistan or Thailand. It's like, I'm pretty sure they're just as dumb as us. Okay, let's be realistic here. I don't think that's very fair. I think that's very disingenuous. And I really, really dislike when you'll see it on like CNN, you'll see it on Fox, you'll see it anywhere, but where they go on the street and they basically like interview people to like show people how stupid the Republicans are, or how stupid the liberals are, or how stupid Americans are. It's like, I think that's mean-spirited and not cool. I don't like that kind of thing. And that's kind of interesting too, because like when I was atheist, I really liked the movie Religulous, and I found it interesting because I watched Religulous, that Bill Maher movie, a while ago, and what struck me is like he's interviewing idiots, Oh no!
You're not gonna like it, but
well, the
kale soup.
Kale soup. It's the vomit from The Exorcist.
Hello.
That's my beautiful, lovely wife. Oh, could I get like a some napkins or something?
Sure. Do you know there was poop outside your door?
Poop outside my door? I'm talking about all this keep your house in order thing, and it's like I have literal dog crap outside of my office door. How wonderful. The soup's actually pretty good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not bad. Thank you.
Spoiled brat.
Hey, what goes around comes around. What comes around goes around. Okay. Everybody says hi, Rachel. Ed Guy 24 says Antifa wouldn't fly in Wyoming. Haha. I've met Wyomings. Mm-hmm. Harley says I can see doing whatever you need to do for your livelihood, but not for material things. People looting for luxury items are scum. I think that's the difference I would make. I think that's where I would draw the line. Luxury items. And it's like I said, I can understand it, being disenfranchised, all that kind of thing throughout your whole life and that kind of thing. It's like, screw you, I'm going to get that flat screen TV. It's like, I get it. I understand it. I don't support it. I don't think it's right. I understand it. But if you can't afford food, if you can't afford a place to stay, to lay your weary head to rest, okay. For example, two little examples. Number one, when I was at Utah State University, I was living on campus in Logan, Utah, and I had very, very little money. I had enough money to cover like the bare minimum, but I didn't have money. So I found myself stealing like gloves and orange juice from Walmart, like weird things that like, I need this, I'm tired of drinking tap water. So I'm not proud of it. I don't support what I did, stealing gloves. I needed gloves. It was cold as balls in that town. It's like, luxury items, items that you need. The other example I have is Rachel and I right now. It's kind of interesting. You're in here with me, Ripley. Where's Ripley? Hey, you come here. So Rachel and I, it's kind of like the more you have at stake. She doesn't really like this right now. Okay. The more you have, the more you're tied to. So it's like Rachel and I got this house, and I'm extraordinarily grateful, but it's like the more you have, it's like we don't have the best jobs. So it's like we have a lot, but we have a tough time paying for food. That's the big thing we have a tough time paying for. We can pay the bills, we can pay all of our obligations, but what's left over after that, we're house poor. So long story short, we have had to rely on churches to provide food. And that has been a huge blessing in our lives, because it's like you can only live off of rice-a-roni and ramen noodles for so long. So, and I was having a discussion with a hardcore atheist recently, and I don't know, we got into this kind of a discussion, and it's like, I don't know, man, like I work with churches, and I see the kind of things they do for the homeless and for the those who are in need, myself included now. And it's like I wouldn't want our world to be rid of that. And that's only speaking to like the material good things that they provide. Not to say anything about the hospitals and orphanages and that kind of thing, but anyway, enough of this talk. Let's move on to something a little happier. Harley says people in my area got their priorities all out of whack. They don't have money for food, so they have welfare and food stamps, yet have 22-inch rims on their whip and the boomingest of stereos. Yeah, priorities. I'm gonna have a little bit of soup here. That is actually pretty good. I can taste the curry. She's too hard on herself. She's like, it has kale, it's bad. So I'm gonna mark these off as we go. Even though that's probably a distracting thing, but we spent 23 minutes on Chile, so I know we have bigger topics to cover. So I'm going to cover the bigger topics now. Food pantries are truly a necessity to people in need. Abso-freaking-lutely. That has been so humbling, and really, that's amazing. And I don't want a world where that kind of thing isn't available. And I don't like the idea of the government being the entity that provides that kind of service. I think it's good. I think it's fine, but I don't know. At least not the only. Anyway, so where do we go from here? We can go shoes, classical music, or Byzantium. I'm a little bit partial to Byzantium. Harley, communities should take care of each other. I agree. And that's something like living in Utah. I have plenty of critiques of the Mormon church and Mormon culture. But what I will say, I mean, I have plenty of really nice stuff that I would say about the LDS. Absolutely. But one thing that I really like about them is they are very community oriented. So my experience of Mormons is that they would rather rely on each other / the church for food pantry, that kind of thing, before relying on the government. And I think that's good. And somebody asked about how taxation is theft, and we'll get to that. So yeah, I have plenty that I disagree with the LDS on, but culturally they have a lot of strengths. I have one vote for classical, one vote for Byzantium. I'll be the tiebreaker, and I'll do classical just because that's going to be quicker. Because I know that we are going to spend a bit of a chunk of time on Byzantium. I have a lot to say on that. Okay, so actually, I just pasted a link in here, but I got the wrong one.
So we'll stop.
Because I don't know, I feel like whatever journey I'm going through, I want to take you guys on the same thing. So it's like you may see the same thing that I see and have a totally different, takeaway. So I watched this video, a very brief history of classical music from 1000 AD to the present. And it was very interesting because it did take you through all of the eras of classical music. And let me find, because I have an answer to the question, which is my favorite classical music era and composer. You're not going to be happy with my answer, but this was basically my my source for this line of inquiry. And what I will say is that this video technically has the early church fathers as composers, as people who helped develop classical music. Unequivocally, sure. I mean, this covers the move from like Gregorian chants to the introduction of the organ, and that led into what's called polyphony in the 1200s. Anyways, let me get back to my, because I have two answers. I have the answer that you're going to like and the answer that you're not going to like. The answer that you're not going to like is liturgy is my favorite classical music because according to this video, it counts. So I'll take liturgy over what we understand classical music to be, just because I think it touches the human element deeper. So an example I'll provide you is an Orthodox liturgy performed in Russia, I guess. Patriarch Kirill in Russian. But it's so moving. It's so moving. And something that I think that instrumental composers and bands and that kind of thing are extraordinarily talented. And I think they can touch on a deep human nerve. Absolutely. But there's something about voice that resonates on a deeper level. And I think that's why we identify with singers so much, because not everybody can, play the guitar. So not everybody's going to get super excited or into it. Not everybody memorizes the guitar lines in songs, unless you're a Blind Guardian fan. Na 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 na. So and it's the thing too. Like we always remember the lyrics, we sing along with the vocals, and something interesting too is I find it interesting that the saxophone is the sexy instrument, and you think like, why is the saxophone the sexy instrument? Aha, because the saxophone. I don't know the technical music vocabulary, but the saxophone like is the closest instrument as far as sound goes to the human voice. So when a saxophone is going, there's something more human about that than, a violin. So I don't know, man. Like, given what I had to work with, I would say that liturgy is my favorite kind of classical music. Because not only do you have the benefit of sound, like the sonic element of being able to identify with the music, but also the lyrics. And I don't know, man, you read some Orthodox hymns, some liturgies, and it's really gorgeous. My hair's kind of wild. That's why I was wearing my hat. I haven't washed my hair for 2 days. I'm trying not to wash my hair too much because I hear that's bad, and I'm trying to grow my hair out long. So hair health is now more important to me. Harley says, not liturgy, that hipster white metal bands, right? No, there's what is it called? Babushka? No. Wind instruments in general were made to simulate voice. Bingo, exactly. But as far as like the answer that you might like as far as classical music goes, of all of the options provided in this video, I was much more drawn toward music that were symphonies, string quartets. I like to go to classical concert maybe a couple times a year. The last one I think was Eroica, which is Mozart or Bach. I think it's Mozart, but basically Eroica was originally written about Napoleon, but when Napoleon assumed control, it was written about Napoleon because he was the leader of this movement in France that was going to bring back democracy, introduce democracy and more of a republic. But as we all know, that turned into basically a military dictatorship, and then he crowned himself emperor. And so in rage at that change, I think it was Mozart who wrote Eroica, but in response to what Napoleon did with that, he like scratched out the original title, which was something like, something to an honorable man or a great man, ode to an honorable man, whatever. Scratch that out, and he's like Eroica, something kind of general. I think it means heroic. My French is not so good, so I couldn't tell you what Eroica means. I imagine it's heroic. Anyways, so yeah, that's classical music and composer. Oh, favorite composer? I mean, for symphonies, I would say Mozart. For liturgy, I would say St. John Chrysostom. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful liturgy. I think that's the liturgy that we use the majority of the year. Beethoven. Thank you, Ed Guy. I knew that. I did not have very good confidence that it was Mozart, but I don't know. So I was like, I think it's Mozart. Beethoven. Okay. Really easy one. What was it? Where was it on here? Is tomato really a fruit? Yes, it is, and that's because it has seeds. A lot of things you might not know is that what pumpkins, cucumbers, squash, green beans, those are all fruit. Eggplant, that's a fruit. Along with the fruit from a plant or tree, we can often eat the leaves, lettuce, stems, celery, roots, carrots, flowers, broccoli. Many of these other parts of the plant are typically referred to as vegetables. I don't really like that question very much. Thank you for submitting it, but I don't really have much to say on that other than it's kind of interesting how the line blurs between categorizations. I don't know. It's like we do have a categorization for it, but basically the interesting nugget of like wisdom that can be extracted from that, I think, is that humans like to draw straight lines. We like to compartmentalize things. And it's like nature doesn't work in straight lines. Nature doesn't have clear distinctions all the time, you know? So, yeah. Harley, you did submit a question, if I remember right. And it was, I think, like, yeah, my top picks and why they never win. I think that was your question. Every question wins when it's the almighty Johncast, because I try to answer all questions. Yeah, we'll go through some easy ones. Anime recommendations, aka why the heck haven't you watched Fate/Zero yet? The answer to that is because I've been showing my wife Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and we just finished it recently, and we both, well, she loved it, which is good. That was my second time going through it, and that's one of the best stories that humanity has to offer, I think. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood it's just amazing. It's terrific in every regard. And we were talking about this, how it's interesting. So you have Edward and Winry, that whole like, and we just found it interesting how they never kiss, you know? They never make out or anything. And it's like, if you were doing an American production, you know that we would be seeing some making out or maybe even some sex. But it's just weird how I don't know that much about Japanese culture, so I invite not correction. Yeah, correction, whatever. Correct me on this. My cat wants to get in. Come on. Come on. And she doesn't want to come in. Dogs are straightforward. I can understand that. Anyway, so it's just interesting that with it seems to me, it's my impression that kissing is like almost a sacred thing in Japanese culture. And the only reason I say that is because I remember looking up why in Japanese porn they always pixelate the genitals. And my understanding was like, if I recall right, it's been a while since I looked that up, but my understanding was that the genitals are like very sacred, you know, very like, taboo to show. So it's like, I wonder if the same thing kind of applies to kissing. I gotta let these two out or they're gonna... A lot of distractions today. Go on, get out. So, I just wonder if... Harley says beeholes apparently aren't sacred. Yeah, and it's like, even in Full Metal Alchemist, there's plenty of side boob and under boob, but no kissing. I just found that interesting. Different cultural norms. Whoa, there's already a looks like she lost the spoon in there. Oh well. Oh, that's actually quite good. Maybe I like kale. Who knows? Of course, you could put curry in anything and I would love it. Let's see. Left Twix or right Twix? No preference. It's just a stupid campaign to get people talking. And it's like, nobody cares about that kind of thing. They always try that. They always try to like, haven't they done this before too? Like caramel Twix or chocolate, peanut butter or chocolate. Wasn't there something like that in Twix where it's like, you decide, audience, is it going to be peanut butter or chocolate? It's like, shut up. Nobody cares. Just produce the product. But I feel like companies feel like they have to be relevant, you know? And it's like, dude, chocolate's never going to not be relevant. If I had to choose between left or right Twix, I would choose right Twix. I don't think you need to guess why, but that's really a stretch. The rise and downfall of Snoopy. I didn't know what to do with this one, so the way I'm taking this question is Snoop Dogg. The rise and fall of Snoop Dogg. I don't know much about Snoop Dogg, so I don't care. I really just don't care. If I get things wrong here. When I'm doing history, theology, contemporary events, politics, any of that, I'll be like, I'm being careful here, but I don't care about Snoop Dogg. So it seems to me that Snoop Dogg has always indulged in this like degenerate lifestyle. It seems like he was part of the group of rappers that kind of reveled in degeneracy. And I know that degeneracy as a word has a lot of like baggage. I don't care. Like the negative elements of hip hop are cancerous. They're cancerous. They're bad. I don't like them. I don't think they're good. And this isn't some kind of religious puritanical perspective. This is just I don't think it's good. I don't think it's promoting good values. You're like, ooh, it's like I actually don't know what that meant. I don't know what I was impersonating there, but what I will say though is that, well, so here's where I will be fair. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe Snoop Dogg has some very intelligent, good, impactful lyrics. I could be wrong. I qualified earlier saying, I don't know much about Snoop Dogg. I don't care. But I have listened to Eminem and Immortal Technique. And what I will say is that there are a lot of moments, at least in Eminem's early to mid career, that have kind of poignant, interesting, fun, creative lyrics. Okay. And then Immortal Technique is somebody who really cares about not the stereotypical things that a rapper cares about. Immortal Technique is somebody who cares about education and being informed and culture and respect. And it's like, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. So you say, oh, John, you're being hypocritical, aren't you? Because like a lot of metal talks about stuff like that, you know? And it's like, all right, so here's the line I would draw there is my impression is that a lot of the black and death metal bands and metal bands in general that sing about this crazy stuff, I guess, they don't really mean it. Like the satanic and occult and that kind of thing, it's like they don't really mean it. It's to get a rise. I think about Deicide, and it's like, I don't know if Glenn Benton. I heard that Glenn Benton actually converted to Christianity. Again, fact check me. I should look this up because I'm actually curious now because he carved an inverted crucifix into his forehead, or he burned it. But anyways, to the extent that you take it serious and you believe in it, that is what I will judge you on. So the rise and fall of Snoop Dogg, I don't think that Snoop Dogg ever had a rise. Monetarily, sure. Fame, sure. But I think I think Snoop Dogg hit an especially low low when he did that that music video where he basically shot President Trump. It's like, okay, like I am not the biggest fan of Obama. I think there were some elements of his presidency that I liked, and there were probably slightly more that I disliked. But I would never support the Dixie Chicks making a music video where they shoot President Trump. Or President Obama? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the Dixie Chicks making a music video where they assassinate President Obama? No, you can't, because the outrage would be stupendous. Stupid. It's so stupid. So I denounce you, Snoop Dogg. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say on that, really. He's not as bad with promoting a negative lifestyle as many rappers, somewhere in the middle. All right, well, thank you. Because, like, so speaking toward rise and fall, if Snoop Dogg was like here when he did that Trump thing, I think that was, and that has nothing to do with my own political stance. That has everything to do with my feelings toward decency. I totally support people's expression in just about every kind of way. But when it comes to portraying the assassination of our country's leader, even if it's Hillary Clinton, I think that would be in really bad taste, and I wouldn't support it. Chocolate is in danger of going extinct. Global warming? Could be. I don't know. If chocolate went extinct, I don't know that that would be a bad thing. Seems to me like white people and Asians? Everybody except for Africa got along without chocolate for a very long time with no issues. And I've put on a little bit of weight since marriage, and I don't think any of that is due to chocolate. But I think that we in the Western world who have so much, we really ought to be more considerate of the kind of food that we allow to be peddled. I don't know what to do about it. I know the European Union. One thing that I do like about the European Union, and you won't hear me say that very much, ever, often, but one positive impression I have about the European Union is food regulations, quality control, that kind of thing. I have a good friend in Germany, Timothy Frigge, and he was telling me some stuff about that, and I'm like, I could get behind that. Fast food is such a danger. And I don't know, you've probably seen Food Inc., but it's like, how much of our food has corn in it? Danger, danger. What's wrong with corn? Well, if everything has corn in it, I don't know. That seems bad to me. Okay, moving on. Tea and why Matt Christ likes it. He's always liked tea. He's an eternal tea being. I have no answer to that. I'm saving Byzantium for last, I think. I'm going through all the easy ones. Somebody asked, if I weigh 99 pounds and eat 1 pound of nachos, am I 1% nacho? Well, that depends on what you define as you. If you are your body, that still wouldn't make sense because that food is inside of you. Now, when the food becomes ingested and assimilated into your body and it's not just sitting there sloshing around in your stomach, then you could say it's a part of your body. But the other thing to consider is we have a crap ton, a boatload of bacteria in our bodies. So it's like those bacteria, your blood cells, like you are a composite kind of creature. You're like a city with cells and cities, like organs, like how much of you is really you? What is you? That's a significant question to ask. Because if you eat 1 pound of nachos and you weigh 99 pounds, I don't think that it's that simple that you then become 1% nacho. Because I don't think that you are your body. I don't think that you are your body. You are your body. You are incarnate within your body. You animate your body. But it's like you cut off any of your limbs, you'll live just fine. You know, you could you could presumably cut off every appendage and part of your body that is not strictly necessary and still be intact as a human mind. I don't know. I think that you're what you are is something immaterial at its root. So make of that what you will. Argue with me if you will, but I don't think that you are your body, which is to say, I don't think that this finger is you. I don't know how to talk about it. Okay? Okay. The dangers of brain implants. I found this to be a very interesting question because at first I didn't know what the question really meant. And so I was like, oh, like implanting a new brain? No, it's like brain implants. They're actually doing it now. What's interesting is they will do open brain surgery and they'll implant a little guy into your brain. I haven't had that much beer, please. But they'll implant a little thing into your brain, and they'll have a little node poking out. And if you are paralyzed, you can like text with your brain, with your brain. You can text. You can operate a smart car, presumably. You can do things with your brain through this node that's attached to your brain. But the interesting thing that I read is your brain, in response to this invasion, creates scar tissue. And as that scar tissue forms, it weakens the signal. And so my understanding is that where we're at right now, you can operate like this for a while, but it's eventually going to deaden, to weaken. And so the question now really is how to make it last longer. If we can move from talking about like days and weeks and months to over a year of this being effective stably throughout the entire, year, then we're talking. But the very real issue that I see, because I have friends who are talking about smart homes. Like I was just talking with my boss, and he was talking to me about how he was going to get a smart shower. And I'm like, ooh, convenient. But what makes you think that that can't be hacked? Of course it can be hacked. I learned in reading about neuroscience today and these kind of brain implants that you absolutely can hack into this kind of thing. Apparently, pacemakers have been hacked. Somebody can hack a pacemaker. What makes you think they can't hack your brain if you have one of these nodes in there anyways? So I think it's a very interesting kind of precedent that we're setting, because you have the ethical component and the practical component. Like, let's see, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that like it introduces a number of precedents, because I don't know if it could get into this, but if it could record your thoughts or record your heart rate, they would say, oh, this person was murdered. If you're a suspect and this person was murdered at 6:00 p.m. exactly, we know. And we took the data from your node, and your heart rate was really accelerating, leading up to and climaxing at 6:00. It's like, okay, could that be used as proof? Maybe you were having sex from 5:59 to 6 p.m. It's possible. But it's like, how much of this could be admissible in court? And I don't know, like brain hacking, pacemaker hacking. There's so much gray area. It's we can't figure out abortion, and yet we want to go into like this kind of territory. It's like we're children trying to do adult things. I think that humans in general are playing a game that we're not prepared to play. I don't think we've figured ourselves out as a species yet. And I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to stop there. Because then we get into like theological anthropology and that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I have my own worldview. Let's see. Ice cream. That's a quick and easy one. Pralines and cream. Cookies. Chocolate chip cookie dough. When I was a kid, I loved Superman ice cream. I love anything with malt. Shoes. That was the highest rated one. You guys like throwing me curveballs. I only have 5 people here, but hey, we're 5 people hanging out, so I'm happy. Shoes. I was interested to learn today that apparently the oldest evidence of shoes we have is from 8,000 BC. So that's 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago. And get this, the oldest shoe that we have, 8,000 BC, found in Oregon. Found in Oregon. And I think that's interesting because we generally think that civilization began with Sumeria, which, if I recall right, is something like 2500 BC. So we'll call that 4,500 years ago. But I have seen convincing arguments put forward that the Sphinx is much older, and that, well, I don't even have to use the Sphinx because we have Göbekli Tepe in modern day Turkey, and that is apparently 10,000 BC. So if that's 12,000 years old, it's like, when did civilization begin? Because Göbekli Tepe is a pretty complex structure. It's a structure that they unearthed in Turkey, and the best what I've read is that they understand it to be some kind of temple, and they keep unearthing more. And so it's like, and the interesting thing too is it seems like it was deliberately buried. That's a mystery, dude. I don't even know what to say on that. So Machu Picchu, the Sphinx, I don't know. I spent time listening to Graham Hancock. He has some very interesting stuff to say about the actual more realistic age of the Sphinx. But Machu Picchu, I don't know how old that is. What, did Jill come in? Is Jill? Oh yeah. All right. Welcome. Hey, we're up to 6. Yeah. So basically, I was just struck by how old shoes are. 8,000 BC. We have shoes in Oregon. The other thing, I'm being a Graham Hancock fanboy here, but when people came to the Americas, apparently, I don't know, again, Graham Hancock has put forward some pretty interesting evidence to suggest that people came to South America much earlier than we have originally thought. So I'm not like planting a stake in any of that, but I am led to believe that more than the contrary. So I don't know. That's not my specialty. That's not within my purview. Tony Cordisco has apparently said that everyone who has ever consumed dihydrogen monoxide has died. I looked this up, and apparently it's true. So I don't know about you, but I don't want dihydrogen monoxide anywhere near me. This is a very serious, dangerous chemical compound, and I don't trust it, and I don't want my kids near it. I don't want my wife near it. I don't know why we haven't banned it. We should also vaccines. Don't vaccinate. No, I can't go there. Dihydrogen monoxide. I prefer Gatorade. Yeah, I'm knocking out all the easy questions because we've been going for like 2.5 hours the past few times. I'm going to try to rein that in. It's 57 minutes now. I'm going to try to shoot for like hour and a half, hour 45, something like that. So do I like video games or board games? I like both, but I prefer board games. The reason for that is, how many times have we spent 2 to 5 hours playing video games, and then eventually we are forced to stop playing the video games, and we stand up and we say, oh, sun's down now. What have I been doing with my life? I've been getting back into Skyrim lately, and it's amazing. I love that game. But I spent like 3 hours playing it last night when I should have been doing other things. So there's that guilt factor, which may or may not be legitimate. It's like, maybe I've earned some free time. But there is something to be said for all of the hard work I put into that game is in a save file. You're not getting anything out of that. You're getting memories and all that. It's like, I remember the days when me and my friends were on a Minecraft server, and it was glorious. We had like a big land, a big world that we shared, and it was amazing. But I think back on it now, and it's like, I don't know, man. If I could go back in time, would I still have put in that time? Would I have done that or something else? I don't know. And so to that end, I find board games and games where you're face to face with people much better. Um, but to answer the question, all right. So the follow up question, I'm going to answer. I'm going to come back to that. But before I move into board games, I'm going to finish this video game follow up, which was 5 favorite video games and what makes them special to you. Minecraft, number 1. No shame in that, because Minecraft is simple, all right? But it's just complex enough to keep you going. And I love the open world aspect. I grew up with Legos, so I love that kind of aesthetic. And I don't know, it's so calming. The music, ding, 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 ding. Oof. Minecraft, Skyrim, for those same reasons. I'm a sucker for fantasy, and it has that open world feel, and it's like an adult Minecraft, because you can go on quests, you can do anything, you can be your own person. Minecraft, Skyrim, Civilization 5. Civilization 6 is good. I'm gonna finger blast somebody. Sorry. Civilization 5, for kind of the similar reason. I really love history. And so what I love to do with Civilization is like adopt the persona of, I am now Ethiopia. I'm king of Ethiopia, or Poland, or Greece. And I like to imagine like what an alternative timeline would be like if I were leading Greece or something, you know? I love watching my country expand and contract and wars, and oh, I love that kind of thing. 2 more video games that I like. Diablo 2. The soundtrack is amazing. The ambience, the ambiance of Diablo 2 is just perfect. It's doomy. It's bleak. It's angry. Ooh, and it still has that kind of fantasy element. Then my last favorite video game had to be Halo/Halo 2. Because playing multiplayer on that is way too fun. But back to board games, I think that it's more worthwhile with your time if you're like face to face with somebody, you know? And I feel like forging those relationships with people, it's like more enriching and it's more dynamic. I mean, it's, you know, you can get that playing multiplayer on a video game too. But to that end too, I would say playing video games with people face to face, like you did in the good old days. You'd get the gang together and you'd hook up your Xboxes and you'd play Halo 2 or Mario Kart or something. Yeah, so I like board games. The board game, I'll find a link for this one just because I feel really good about this. A board game I've been really high on lately is called Who Goes There? It is a board game based off of, what's his name? Campbell, I think. The book on which John Carpenter's The Thing was based. And it's a really cool board game because the more people you have, the better it is. But I would not play it with fewer than 5 people. But basically, so you and your people, you're stranded on this and in this Antarctic base, and you have to just defend yourself, and you have to go out and get map cards, basically, because the goal of the game is to get out on the helicopter, which happens at the end of the game after you've gone through 3 phases. And in between each phase, you have a food round and a sleep round. Now, as you're going out and getting helicopter points and that kind of thing, you're going to encounter the thing. And the thing is, whenever you take a damage point, a specific kind of damage point, whenever you take a damage point, basically, you have to draw a vulnerable card. Now, there are 12 vulnerable cards, one of which represents infection. So when you draw a vulnerable card, you might be infected. You have a 1 in 12 chance of being infected if you get it first. And nobody else will look at your card. And basically, so you have to trade to create. Anyway, it's just really great because it creates paranoia, and it's like, if you need to trade to get food, it's like, what if the person's infected? I could get infected. When you get infected, the goal of the game is from that point forward to get onto the helicopter round. Basically, at the end, whoever is the leader will stand in front of the helicopter and say, okay, I'm going to decide who gets on the helicopter. And you need a certain amount of helicopter points to do this successfully, to get out successfully. So that's why you have to go out and get cards and that kind of thing. But basically, it's like you need to accurately determine who is infected and who isn't. Because if you take the wrong person onto the helicopter, you might lose. And if you leave a healthy person behind, and it's kind of complex, but it's just really amazing. It's a fun game. Anyways, moving along. So, all right. I think we're to the final 3 big boys. Actually, this one's not too big. How is taxation theft? I don't know who asked that. That is good soup. Maybe I like kale. Okay, so how is taxation theft? The reality is, okay. The presumption is that all of us in society have agreed to pay a certain portion of our paychecks, of our income, to federal tax and state tax. All of us have supposedly agreed to do this. Yet if you opt out, if you don't pay your taxes, eventually somebody's going to show up at your door wearing a gun on his belt. Not to say that they're going to come into your house and kill you, but if you don't pay your taxes long enough, eventually somebody is going to come to your house armed, and they're going to take you away and force you to do something. So that is an act of violence. That is an act of compulsion, of aggression. So, the reality is that taxation is theft, unless you choose to give it. So, I don't know. I'm not super steeped in libertarian philosophy, but that's my understanding of it. And as you can tell, I'm pretty sympathetic toward it. However, I don't know that I would go so far as to say my position would probably be something more like taxation is theft. Sure, I'm with you. However, I do want public schools. I do want nonprofit colleges and universities. I do want, fire department, police department, public parks. So it's like, is taxation theft? Yes. But do I want taxes? Yes. Where I'm critical is how that tax money gets used. Okay, the big 2 topics. You ready? 1 hour and 7 minutes in. I think we'll do fine. Which of these is going to be shorter? Harley says, I don't mind doing my part. I just wish we could choose where our contributions go. Yep. That's basically where I'm at too. Okay, so I'm going to go with what I perceive to be the easier topic first, because the mentality is I want to end with a bang. So I'm going to go with, how do you feel about historical movies that take dramatic liberties with the content, i.e. Lawrence of Arabia, Admiral, these movies. So my feeling toward movies that take dramatic liberties with actual true stories is it depends. I think that whatever story you're trying to tell needs to keep the spirit intact. It needs to be true to the people portrayed. So, for example, Lawrence of Arabia, definitely one of my top films. Is it completely accurate to what actually happened? No. But do I think that it was honest to T.E. Lawrence's spirit, to who he was as a person? Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think it's an amazing movie, and I think that while it does take some dramatic liberties, I think it's pretty true to who he was. And same with Admiral, which is an amazing movie. Just like my fierce advocacy for Bone Tomahawk, I have a fierce sense of loyalty to the movie Admiral. So I'm going to promote that to you right now. And I'm not going to give you Rotten Tomatoes because Rotten Tomatoes is cancer. Master and Commander, Russell Crowe, awesome. Yeah, I love that movie too. That's a great movie. I want more movies like that. I want a movie about Belisarius. I want another Ben-Hur. I want another 10 Commandments, Passion of the Christ, and a movie like that. Well, I guess we are kind of getting that. Never mind. I should backpedal a little bit because, yeah, The Last King of Scotland, that was a good movie. I saw that when I was a kid, so I need to watch that again. But there are some new movies on Netflix that are kind of in that vein. So I backpedal a little bit. There are some movies that are still coming out that are trying to do historical topics. I'm off topic. Okay, so adopting true events, true people, and taking dramatic liberties can be done. As long as you keep the spirit of the events and people intact. And I think the two aforementioned movies do that very well. Now, the trick, as somebody who is a strong enthusiast of the Frank Daniel methodology of storytelling, 8-act story structure, that kind of thing, I would say that let me take well, all right, B before A. My wife and I have a little inside joke or whatever. Like, I'll have a thought and I'll be like, yeah, that's right. And then I'll come in and be like, isn't that right, Rachel? Not like that, but I'll come in like in the middle of a thought or something and she'll be like, what? And I'll be like, B before A. I need to give you A before I talk about B. So that's what I was just doing there. So if ever I say, B before A, catch myself, go back, tell you what I'm thinking. So the trick is life doesn't always happen in a neat kind of framework. All right. Life is messy. It kind of goes this way. It kind of goes that way. Timelines are weird. So in order to tell an effective, good quality story in the span of 1 to 2.5 hours, you need to do a lot of condensing, a lot of cutting out the boring parts. I think it was, who's that amazing, who directed Birds? I should know this, being a film aficionado. Orson Welles, Birds director movie. He's like one of the best directors of all time. Alfred Hitchcock. Come on, John. Alfred Hitchcock, I think, said something like, it was something like, what is film but life with all of the boring bits cut out? That is what you have to capture when adapting a true story. Because like you can read T.E. Lawrence book, 7 Pillars of Wisdom. It's an amazing book, but it's like, how are you going to turn that into a movie? How are you going to do that? So cut out all the boring bits. Okay. That's a start. But then you also, something to keep in mind is not all the time do you have a real person who had a growth, a trajectory, inner and outer. Basically what I'm getting at is in storytelling, I'm using the Frank Daniel methodology of storytelling, you have a want versus a need. Luke Skywalker wants to blow up the Death Star, but what he needs is to recognize the Force. He needs to trust the Force. So though your want and your need can be in alignment, but sometimes they can be in opposition. I think it was a Disney or Pixar movie, Inside Out. The character Joy wants to protect her human little girl from experiencing sadness, but what she needs is to let her experience sadness. If I remember the movie right, that was a really good movie. So I take, for example, this next Judicator album, Let There Be Nothing. I tried as best I could to adapt the album and the story into an 8-act story structure. Can't do that perfectly. It's just not quite the medium for doing that, an album. But I did my darndest. And so I chose a time frame. I chose a place to begin the story and a place to end the story. I chose to begin the story when Belisarius was on the boat headed toward Africa to retake North Africa. Could I have started it during the Nika revolt or even a little bit before that? Yeah. But for the story that I came up with for I didn't come up with the story. I organized the existing pieces that were there and made them conform as best I could to the 8-act story structure. So, yeah, I think that I'm trying to think like, okay, so Belisarius in Let There Be Nothing has a want and a need. What would his need be? I don't know. I haven't analyzed my own work. Let's see. That's a story that really just writes itself. I think, all right, so maybe, yeah, I think you would say this. Drawing on my storytelling expertise here, I think that Let There Be Nothing would almost fall into a tragedy category as opposed to a comedy or a melodrama. And I say that because Belisarius' want in Let There Be Nothing, the next Judicator album, is to retake Italy, the Italian peninsula, and North Africa. I don't know, there's more in there. I'm kind of rambling at this point. I've offered you some good nuggets. Basically, why I said that it was a tragedy is because Belisarius doesn't get his want. I mean, he technically does. All right, yeah, so he gets his want, but he doesn't get his need. Because his need would have to be something oriented around Antonina, his wife, who cheated on him with his godson. So I know if I was working with a story editor, right now he would be telling me, all right, your homework is to find out what Belisarius' want and need are. If we're going to care about this person, we need to know the stakes. So basically, just like you can take creative liberties with adapting a true story if you keep the spirit of them correct. Because I think of Admiral. It's like Michel de Ruyter. I don't know a ton about him. I know he was a family man. But it's like, okay, so here's a movie where Michel de Ruyter wants to be a family man, but what he needs is to give his life. He needs to give everything for his country. That's a bummer. Do you see how just having the want and the need in tension creates like, oh man, it creates like a yearning. Here's a guy who just wants to be a family man, but what he needs to do is give everything, including his connection to his family, for his country. And his country ends up throwing him down the shitter anyways. So it's just a sad movie. It's so good. It has Charles Dance. It has the main character has a mustache. Come on, dude. Come on. Watch Admiral. Watch Admiral and Bone Tomahawk. Yeah. Anyways, I think it's about time for next topic. The final topic. Hey, we're doing a lot better on time this time. Let me know if you like this. You know, if you'd rather just have me go for the big ones first, I can do that in the future. Sure, why not? Okay, you ready for history? Let's do history. Okay, so was the fall of Constantinople in 1453 preventable? It depends on where you draw the line. If you want to know if in the year 1453 was the fall of Constantinople preventable, I don't think so. It would have taken an act of God, and we'll come back to that because there's something interesting to say about that. It would have taken an act of God to preserve the Eastern Roman Empire, which by that time was pretty much a city-state, from being conquered by its neighbors to the south or its neighbors to the north or to the west. On all sides, just there was no way out for Byzantium. So was it preventable in 1453? No, I don't think so. So it's like, okay, at what point were things set in motion that made it such that it could not have been reversed? I think the answer to this is the Fourth Crusade. Let me get the years right here. So the Fourth Crusade, I know it happened in the 1200s. Aha! 1202 to 1204. So basically what you had was a crusade that was being organized by two different sides. It was the Venetians and who? The Venetians. I spent so much time researching all the other stuff that I didn't. Whatever. Do you really care? I'm not a history teacher yet, but who? It was the Venetians and who? The Frankish? No. Stand with me. Whatever. I'm just going to go by memory. Okay, so 1202 to 1204, you have the Fourth Crusade. You had the Venetians, who were basically going. The agreement was the Venetians said, we'll provide the ships and the money, I think, if I'm right. And the rest of the Crusaders basically said, we'll provide. No, yeah, I think they said, we'll provide the money and the manpower. So they did that. They met. If I remember right, the Venetians, like neither one of the sides really lived up to their bargain fully. But basically what happened is at the time in Constantinople, there was sort of a power crisis, and whatever prince was supposed to succeed to the throne got ousted. So he came to these crusaders basically and said, hey, can you help me? If you help me win the throne, when I'm emperor, I'll give you plenty of money. Don't even sweat it. So they're like, this could be the perfect solution. So they come back with him, and basically they managed to win. They managed to. I don't think they attacked Constantinople, but they went with him, and by hook or by crook, he got the throne. But he got the throne, and then he was like, I forget if he wasn't going to pay them, if he was like, I don't know if I'm going to pay you anymore, or if he just didn't have the support. I don't know. Like I said, this isn't the aspect of this question that I spent the most time researching. What you need to know is that the new emperor who they arranged things with, he was killed not long after assuming the throne. So the Crusaders are sitting around tapping their feet saying, we came all the way over here with a very clear deal, and now the deal is not being honored. Because the guy who ended up taking the throne after the guy that they were working with, because that guy got killed. Isn't it confusing? That's why people sometimes refer to messy infighting as Byzantine. Anyways, the new guy was like, your deal was with him, so your deal died with him as far as I'm concerned. And Constantinople had some of the best defenses that there were. So they had kind of reason to be arrogant. But the Crusaders were like, well, if you're not going to live up to your end of the deal, we're going to attack. So the Crusaders attacked Constantinople. They took it, they sacked it, and not only that, they didn't stop at just sacking Constantinople and like taking what they wanted and going. No. They carved up Eastern Rome. They carved up Byzantium and turned it into what was called the Latin states, if I remember right. And it took, I think, about like 60 years or so before the Latin states were finally overthrown. And the thing is, after the Fourth Crusade, after the Latin states, Constantinople, Byzantium never quite regained its foothold, its power. It never quite came back from that. So from that point forward, it was just a constantly retreating border. It got carved up time and time again. So I think the events of the Fourth Crusade really signaled the beginning of the end for the Byzantine Empire. But people have pushed it back even further to the Battle of Manzikert, which happened in the 1100s, if I remember right. I don't know why I'm so concerned about being accurate. I don't think it really matters that much. I don't think you need to know the timeline. I think you need to know the timeline. 1071. See? 1100s. Technically, I was correct. So 1071, 1202. Oh, 1071. That wasn't too far away from 1202. It was only like 35 years. So yeah, I'm fine putting it at the Battle of Manzikert, because the Battle of Manzikert saw it ushered into the Byzantine Empire a level of distrust for their leaders in a way that had not been really present before, to my knowledge. Because what happened is the emperor who led the empire at the time of the Battle of Manzikert, which the Byzantines lost soundly, the emperor got captured and he was ransomed back. But if I remember right, the empress got another husband, because she was the original ruler, but it was like, she's a woman, can she really handle it? So she was like, I need a man. So she married this guy. I think his name was Romanos. But what happened is, so he got captured, he got ransomed back, and then I think, long story short, he was exiled, and he was like, please, like, I'll do it, just I'm sorry, like, I did my best, like, and he did. He didn't do anything wrong, you know. He did his best to protect the empire, but they wanted to exile him anyway. So he starts going to a monastery to live out the rest of his life, working for God, basically. And a messenger comes to the party that's escorting him to the monastery, and they basically say, "Ooh, sorry, we just got a message that we actually have to pluck out your eyes and your tongue." Like, so they stabbed out his eyes, and I think they cut out his tongue too. And he didn't live much longer than that. And while that satisfied the initial bloodlust that people felt after having suffered such a horrible defeat with the campaign surrounding Manzikert, people started to turn on the ruling class after that, saying, like, here's a guy who gave everything, and you treated him like that. Oh my gosh. So I don't know, man. Like, you might be able to find this kind of thing in every generation, but I think about how that connects to where we're at now as a country. I don't think we're there yet, but I think there have been glimmers of that. I think there have been dangerous situations that have been kind of similar to that, and it's scary. So yeah, I'm fine putting it at Manzikert, though I think the Fourth Crusade is where things became irreversible. The period between Manzikert and the Fourth Crusade, I think if they wanted to pull things together, they could have. Well, of course they wanted to, but they didn't make the right choices. So there's more to say on that. There's more to say on that. Because I'm going to do this again. I'm going to hit the follow-up question, and the follow-up question is going to bring me back to where... So I'm jumping off here into the next question, and that is going to lead me back to the original springboard. All right, so put a bookmark there. So, do you see the fall of Constantinople as a treacherous murder or a mercy kill? Neither. I do not see it as treacherous murder because treachery implies that you were betrayed. Betrayal implies that you were close to somebody and then they stabbed you in the back. The situation prior to 1453, they weren't betrayed. Constantinople, Byzantium at that point, was essentially a city-state. Like I said, it was very small. In fact, let me look up 1453 map Byzantium, because I want to communicate to you just how small it had been at that time. 1450, okay? 1450. All right, so basically you have, oh, dude, that's no joke, man. So you know how you have Greece and it goes up, and then you have that like peninsula with Constantinople, and then the mainland of Turkey. The Ottomans had taken the mainland of Turkey and the Balkans, the territory above Greece. So Eastern Rome was surrounded north, south, east, and west by the Ottomans. They had that peninsula, I think Thrace? No, that's not. They had the peninsula, and they had the Fingers Island in Greece, and they had some other territories. So they basically had what equates to an island and a peninsula. Small, tiny. Point being, it was a matter of time before they were conquered. There's no way that they could have survived. It would have taken an act of God to preserve them. And that leads me back. Oh, yeah. And then was it a mercy kill? No, it wasn't a mercy kill. There was nothing merciful about that. The Turks saw it as an easy win, and it pretty much was. So they just took it. Can you blame them? Yes. But I can also understand, why they did it. It was an easy take. Okay, so act of God. The Council of Florence, which was in the year 1431, between 1431 to 1449. Ooh, that's like 4 years before the fall of Constantinople is when this council was concluded. Okay, so the Council of Florence, as it pertains to Byzantium, was a council in which all of the representatives of Orthodoxy agreed to make concessions on just about every point. Because, recap, East and Western Christendom were separated by now. When the Great Schism happened in 1054, which is to say the Christian East and West split in 1054, they excommunicated each other. And this was due largely to the papal claims of authority, that the Pope had immediate and universal jurisdiction over all of the churches. So if the Pope says something, that's what it is. No question. Sorry. And then the other thing was the Christians in the West had inserted into the Nicene Creed one word, filioque, which, in context of what's being said, in the real Nicene Creed, what is said is that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. But the Latins inserted the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son. Now, I could go into the weeds about this theologically, but I'm just going to kind of touch on it, and if anybody ever wants to talk about it, we can talk about it. But so these 2 points were the big points of contention. There were other things, like using leavened bread versus unleavened bread in the liturgy, stuff like that. But really, like, these are the 2 big things. And that led to a schism between East and West. So that's where you have Catholic and Orthodox. So, with the Council of Florence in, what was it, 1390 to, well, it ended 4 years prior to the fall of Constantinople. That's what we need to know. So, you had all of these representatives from the Orthodox Church come to the Council of Florence, and they basically just like rolled over on their bellies and said, we'll agree to the filioque, we'll agree to the papal claims, we'll agree to just about everything you want. Please help us. Please help us. My understanding is that the emperor cared about this a lot because he wanted the West to help preserve Byzantium, Eastern Rome. And so this was important, guys. We have the Turks surrounding us on every side. And so whatever they want, you have to agree to it, okay? Because we need, if the church is reunited, then they're going to see greater stake in actually helping us. Oh, sorry, Stephen. Stephen, if it helps, Steve, I'm like probably 15 minutes from being done. So if you want to stay, just know I'm near the end. Almost done. But anyways, so yeah, the all of the bishops who represented Orthodoxy there rolled over on their bellies, except for one Saint Mark of Ephesus, who said, "This is bullcrap. I'm not doing it. I'm not signing this piece of trash document. I'm not agreeing to this." So everybody in the East, all of the representatives came back, and Saint Mark of Ephesus was like, "They signed away our church. They signed away our faith. They gave everything to the Latins," and the people were pissed. The people were not happy. And St. Mark of Ephesus, he preached in Constantinople. And in fact, what happened, because long story short, they basically agreed, like the deal was done. And so you had Latins coming over into Constantinople, like observing like how this would happen. Oh, look at all these changes we're going to make. And so, but what they noticed is that people stopped attending church because these were churches led by people who agreed to basically sign away core key truths of their faith. And so people were like, I'm not going to go to church. That church is led by Father so-and-so who supported the Council of Florence, that document. I'm not going to church. So it's like this state of shock. Well, St. Mark ends up going around and preaching to everybody else and outside of Constantinople, because they eventually, I think if I remember right, put him on house arrest. So he's like, screw this, I'm going. So he went to like Ephesus, and he went here and there, and he eventually, I think, went to Mount Athos, where he was arrested, and I forget how, but he eventually died. But the whole point of that act of God thing is, now there's two sides to this. The whole point of that, it's an act of God that would save Constantinople. People have said that signing the document at the Council of Florence is what made God abandon the Eastern Roman Empire. That God would have preserved Byzantium so long as they held to their faith. And that's a really good idea. Can you hear that? Oh, no. Are you trying to get in, Moose? I see your nose. Okay, anyways. So the idea that Byzantium would have been preserved had they not signed the document at the Council of Florence, I don't know, because like I said, the empire was on a decline no matter what. I think it was just a matter of time, but to some people, they would say that signing the document at the Council of Florence is what did it. But yeah, sort of an interesting train of thought. What? Come in. Can you knock it open? I think my wife's watching Friends in the other room. end of the beer, I think, signals the end of the night. Do I have anything else to say about the fall of Constantinople? I'm pretty sure that it was a different emperor. I think it was a proper Orthodox emperor. Let me look up one last thing. One last thing. Palaiologos the 11th was the emperor at the time. I want to know if Constantine the 11th, Palaiologos, was properly Orthodox or if he was a supporter of the Council of Florence. Despite the foreign and domestic difficulties during his reign, which culminated in the fall of Constantinople and of the Byzantine Empire, contemporary sources generally speak respectfully of the Emperor Constantine. When his brother, Emperor John VIII Palaiologos, died childless, a dispute erupted between Constantine and his brother Demetrios Palaiologos over the throne. Basically, the reason I bring that up, I question, was he truly like Orthodox? Was because he is, the myth is that he was very brave when he died, that he, seeing that the city was going to fall, he like ripped off his emperor's clothes and he's like, I'm going to die as one of my men, basically. Let's see, this Wikipedia. Before the beginning of the siege, Mehmed II made an offer to Constantine XI. In exchange for the surrender of Constantinople, the emperor's life would be spared, and he would continue to rule in Mistra. As preserved by George Svances, Constantine replied, as to surrendering the city to you, it is not for me to decide, or for anyone else or its citizens. For all of us have reached the mutual decision to die of our own free will without any regard for our lives. Constantine led the defense of the city and took an active part in the fighting alongside his troops in the land walls. At the same time, he used his diplomatic skills to maintain the necessary unity between the Genoese, Venetian, and Greek troops. Here we go. Constantine died the day the city fell, 29 May 1453. There were no known surviving eyewitnesses to the death of the emperor, and none of his entourage survived to any credible account, to offer any credible account of his death. According to Michael Critobulus, writing later in Mehmed's service, he remarked, "The city is fallen, and I am still alive." Then he tore off his imperial ornaments so as to let nothing distinguish him from any of his soldiers, and led his remaining troops in a last charge where he was killed. Mehmed sent soldiers to search among the dead for his body. The first body that was believed to be the emperor's, a body that had silk stockings with an eagle embroidered on it, was decapitated and marched around the ruined capital. However, it failed to gain any recognition from the citizens of Constantinople. Anyways, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I don't know. I would just be curious to know, because I know that there was the emperor who presided over the events of the Council of Florence, and another one, maybe two, before Constantine XI Palaiologos. Anyway, I'd just be curious to know if he was truly Orthodox or one of those dogs who signed away the faith to the Latins. Okay. This is kind of an interesting John cast. The conversations near the beginning were interesting. About looting and theft and that kind of stuff. That was fun. So yeah, we'll do another John cast in 2 weeks from now. Any last questions or comments before we wrap up? Doesn't look like it, but what soup is that? It's curry kale soup. Rachel is delving into the world of kale. So am I. Good to see you, Ty. Quite humbling that you're here, considering that you know, what little humble corner I occupy here, you guys, Lords of the Trident, you do what you do well. Okay. I think that's about it then. I'm going to eat some ginger snaps because I've earned it. And I hope that I hope there's some more historical questions next time. We'll put up a poll for next week's or the next John cast here in a couple days. And we'll see what's on the docket for next time then. Thank you guys. Ooh, yeah. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Hour 44. Hey, we're a half hour ahead of what we normally have done, so that's cool. All right. Next time will be electric. Take care, guys. Have a great night.